Dipal Doshi is CEO of Entrada Therapeutics.
Like I think a lot of CEOs, you're probably pretty hard on themselves.
A sense of ownership.
Ownership and responsibility. Like I feel as though I have responsibility over a lot of people.
How do you continue to motivate them?
It's our job, and it's my job as a leader of this company to be able to continue to instill that hope and tenacity into not only myself, but my colleagues around me.
They say being a CEO is the loneliest job.
A CEO's job is never about shutting off your phone. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It's about finding those pockets of time to be present.
Some of the best conversations happen with people you think you already know. I've known today's guest for years, but it wasn't until this conversation that I truly understood his journey and the decisions he's made along the way. Dipal Doshi is CEO of Entrada Therapeutics. Over the past 9 years, he's built Entrada into one of the most important biotech companies in the Duchenne muscular dystrophy space. Dipal was employee number 1, and as a non-scientist, he's built the company from an unproven hypothesis through its IPO and now into active clinical development in one of the most competitive landscapes in biotech. What comes through is how intentional he is. He thinks like a chess player, always looking 3 to 4 moves ahead. And he blocks off Fridays just to make sure he's still asking the right questions. I love that he has a view that biotech isn't a high failure industry. It's a high hope one. We cover a lot in this conversation: Entrada's founding story, leading through a clinical hold, staying focused with competitive noise in DMD, the company's patient-first culture, and how he stays grounded at home. Before we get started, this conversation was recorded before Entrada's recent clinical data release. The leadership lessons Dipal shares are still very relevant, and the company's mission hasn't changed. No spotlight needed is proud to welcome Dipal Doshi. Hey, Dipal.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I think we're going to start more towards the end than the beginning. About a year ago, you guys went through a restructuring. You laid off about 20% of the workforce and did a strategic pivot.
Yep.
This wasn't forced. How often are you maybe looking at things from a strategic standpoint of saying, all right, we're just at a different stage today than we were 12 months ago, 24 months ago, whatever. You know, how often do you feel like you have to do those pauses and analyses of the business and what you need for the next period of time?
I do it every week. I do by myself. I don't do it with other people. I sit on Fridays. I block off my assistant and I block off most of my calendar on Friday. And a lot of that is for me to keep up with email, for me to make calls if I need to. But a lot of that's just inflection, right? And not like essentially what did we do in this past week, but where are we is really the way I view it. Like where are we and where are we going? Interesting. And I think, from a CEO spot, that might be a little too much inflection point time, but it helps me. It helps me think through what's going to happen the next week and the following week and the following week. Yeah. And I also kind of keep track mentally of all the changes in my mind. Like, should we be entering this space? Should we be accelerating this therapeutic area? Should I have a conversation with our head of R&D about, what the clinical differentiation from a therapeutic product profile is going to look like for this program versus this program? Right. And I do it because it keeps us active, it keeps us healthy, and it keeps us asking the right questions. Because ultimately, the answer to the question that I think all the folks at Entrada are trying to solve by finding an answer is, are we going to be able to make a drug? And are we going to be able to make a drug that's going to help patients? Not a me too, but are we going to really be able to move the envelope from a quality of life perspective for that patient? And so I spend every week, every Friday, at least a couple hours just by myself, just sitting. It's kind of funny when my family walks in and they think that I'm just staring out into space because I kind of am.
Yeah.
It's also a very quiet, inflective time for me to say, all right, how am I doing as a CEO? Because like I think a lot of CEOs, you're probably pretty hard on themselves.
A sense of ownership.
Yeah, ownership and responsibility. Like I feel as though I have responsibility over a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because I do, right?
Right?
But I also have responsibility over a lot of capital, right? So it's not only the people who work for Entrada, it's people who've invested in us. Not in our current 13 Fs, but like even folks that invested in us like 7 or 8 years ago, things like that. Like we are the stewards of capital. And I think it's not only myself have used it that way, stewards of capital and stewards of careers, right? It's not only myself, but it's our head of R&D, it's our president and COO. It goes throughout the organization. But I do have those inflected points every week.
Every week. I wonder if that's a little bit about your background. I mean, just from your background, you were a liberal arts major.
Yes, I am.
But you did sales.
Right.
You did marketing.
Yeah.
You did investment banking.
Yeah.
Private equity, venture capital.
I did a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to connect a lot of points before you even became a CEO.
Yes.
Was that by design? Or
sure. Yes.
When you were 20 something, you knew exactly what you were going to do.
Exactly. I had my 5-year career planned out when I was 18.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it did start with curiosity. Like I am a very curious person. I was a liberal arts major because I was curious. Mm-hmm. I like to read a lot. I wrote like my senior year, I wrote a thesis paper on the relationship between Percy Shelley and John Keats, like 2 English romantic poets, right? Like, and part of that was because I was just curious about their lives and I liked what they wrote. When I think back 30 years now almost, right? Like, I think that that's what's so exciting about being a liberal arts major. It's why I push my kids into it as well too, because I think it wasn't a linear road for me.
Yeah.
But I don't think it should be linear. I think you should be learning along the way and then taking bits and pieces, right? So I did sales, right? So what did an English major, a liberal arts major learn about being a pharma sales rep in this great city in New York, right? I didn't learn much about the drugs. I learned about how to get into a room and speak to a decision maker, whether it was a nurse, an office manager, a physician. I learned how to market myself. I learned a little bit about grit and perseverance and
getting doors slammed.
And getting doors slammed and not taking it personally or breaking it down, having an inflected point to say, why did that door get shut on me? And how do I get, how do I get back in? Consulting allowed me, when I did consulting for a couple of years, allowed me to kind of say, all right, I can still be curious. I don't know what it is I want to do. I know what I don't want to do, which was go back to having doors shut on me. But let me find some type of structure so that I can actually break down a problem instead of in my head kind of being all over the place. And I think consulting allowed me to do that within a variety of different industries, which was important. Mm-hmm. I started gravitating more towards healthcare, and then I went back to Eli Lilly. And Eli Lilly to this day is one of the companies that I admire the most. Just
Why?
the way that they treat people. They haven't deviated from their North Star from when they were founded in Indianapolis, 100 and something years ago.
Yeah.
They still follow research. They still treat people well. They treat patients well. They treat their employees well. They grow them. They bring an international perspective. In Indianapolis, one of the greatest things that when I lived in Indianapolis, one of the greatest things would be going to a restaurant in the middle of the U.S. and hearing Portuguese, Spanish, different languages all over the place. And it brought this international dynamic into the middle of this country. And I thought it was fantastically awesome to see as a 25-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And then going to business school, right? Having Lilly sponsor me to go to business school, which is probably the first time that I got really serious about what is it that I want to do?
Yeah.
And that was in my late 20s. I was 26 or 27, I think, at that time. And then fortunate to go into Wharton and then made the call to go into investment banking, which...
How was that?
It was short. It was, I've oftentimes said, you'll learn as much about the great jobs as you will about the jobs that you're not good at. And that is a job that
But I got to imagine doing banking, at least exposure to the capital market side of things, which in your CEO role is critically important.
I spend a lot of time with bankers today, right? I spend a lot of time with bankers. I spend a lot of time with lawyers. I spend a lot of time with consultants. All besides the law part of it, 2 out of those 3, I've been in that role. Mm-hmm. So it does help. But even though it was a short amount of time for me, it does help. That exposure certainly did help me because you could speak the same language. I can see how they think about things, and I've lived, albeit a short time, in the shoes that they're living in. But the capital markets exposure and understanding as much as I possibly can about how the capital markets work is something that, even though I was only at Merrill Lynch for a little bit of time, it's something that I did carry forward. So yeah.
So, I think at Entrada, you, between early round fundraising, Series A, B, and IPO, you've raised about $400 million.
Yeah, that's about right.
So what skill sets would you say are really critical towards capital raising, particularly for early stage companies? How do you thread that needle when it comes to, talking to the bankers, talking to clients, buy side investors, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, and we raised money when we did our Series A back in December 2018. I think is when it closed. We raised $59 million. Yeah. It's not like it came together in a day or a month. It took a long time. And part of that was a little bit around the markets. Part of that was also just we didn't have the right amount of data to be able to de-risk a early bet, so to speak.
Still preclinical.
It was even before preclinical. Wow. It was like discovery. It was an idea with a little bit of data. And so what we learned quickly within our early rounds of feedback was that we need more. Our business plan wasn't as broad as it was hard to connect the dots. Mm-hmm. And so taking that feedback from the early venture folks who we spoke to, who then happened to come back to invest in our Series A was critical for us, right? Talking to the right people, talking to people that are smarter than you, being persistent, but listening. I mean, oh my goodness, it's like, we say this to our kids all the time, just listen to what people are telling you.
Right. Listen
to the people who have finance the companies that you're trying to build and take their feedback, incorporate their feedback. And in the background, our now president of R&D, who was our CSO, was spending time developing that data. We knew that we need data, of course. No one's going to give you $59 million right. for an idea. But like, how do we start to generate the data that will allow us to say that this thing has legs? Like if I had to invest in it with my own money, would I invest in it at that point? Right? That's the best litmus test, I think. And being persistent is critical. Following up, going to conferences, meeting more people, continuously networking. Honestly, Sheetal, it took me back to my Lilly days. It took me back to being a sales rep. It took me right back, right? Yeah. It was a much more like, I'm not going to get beaten down by this. I think that this has a place somewhere within drug development. The ability to create a delivery vehicle that can access intracellular targets, which is what the backbone of this company is, was not something that any company could do. They tried to do it and they failed at a bunch of different reasons, right? Because of tox issues, things like that. So now we know the issues, right? So how do we overcome those issues? And that was the data that Natarajan, our CSO at the time, our president of R&D now, was building in the background. Mm-hmm. How do I convince a genre of investors who have lost a lot of money based upon this type of strategy that we've overcome the limitations or the failures that their companies that they have invested in have lived through? Mm-hmm. And that was the magic bullet right there. It took us 6 months, 9 months, something like that, to kind of get to that catalyst. And then we had 2 funds that led our Series A, and then we were kind of off to the races with at least money to be able to continue to test the hypothesis of intracellular drug delivery. And that was it. Yeah. It wasn't about let's develop a DMD drug or a Duchenne or another neurodegenerative drug. It was prove to me that you can get inside the cell. That was and once you got that, once we had that, once we could prove it, then that's the check. Yeah. But literally the check and figuratively the check in the box for at least a platform company.
Yeah. So maybe let's pause here for a second and before Entrada, just before, you worked as Chief Business Officer of Amicus Therapeutics. Yeah. Now, I was never a biotech investor, but it does feel as though it was a unique time in rare disease because it was getting a lot more attention, more money, more capital was being put behind it. What was it like to be at Amicus during that period of time when there was a lot of attention to rare disease?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, I give a tremendous amount of credit to John Crowley.
The CEO
at the time, one of the founders and CEO at the time, now the president and CEO of Bio. John's passion is really what drove the execution around Amicus. So I was there between 2013 and 2017. So that was a very inflective time for Amicus. The company was getting the market ready for Galafold, their Fabry drug, and it was still going through some regulatory challenges at the time. The second drug, which was focused on Pompe disease, was still relatively early, but it was moving along, and that was a very important drug because of John's family, but also because there was the unmet clinical need in Pompe was and still remains very, very high. So looking at that, not from the lens of, the CEO, but looking at the lens from the thousands of patients that have Pompe disease was really important. And then what else, right? And I was more or less brought in to help John and the company think about what else. So the chief business officer role is pretty consistent around BD and M&A and things like that. But I think my role was a little bit bigger than that in terms of, I did help contribute to the corporate strategy of the company and a bunch of other things. But it was also an opportunity for Amicus to branch out and, make some bets into other disease areas as well, which I know was really important to the corporate vision of that company. I think the biggest thing that I learned at Amicus, though, was really through my interactions with John and how he viewed patient advocacy. That
Patients
was
first.
Amicus was the first company that had a chief patient advocacy officer, and that was Jane Gershkowitz, who just recently retired and is the creme de la creme, the best of how to interact with patient groups, how to thread that needle. And that's a very difficult needle because you're dealing with parents, but you're also dealing with advocates as well. It also allowed me to see, Amicus had a bit of an up and down between 2013 and 2017. They had some regulatory setbacks, but how do you rise up in challenges where your stock went down 60% in one day? How do you react to that? How do you react to the hundreds of people who work for the company that are deflated? Yeah. It was a really good tutorial for me before I kind of ventured out on my own in 2017. We saw a lot. We saw a lot in those 4 years, right? Amicus also, at the time, I still think today, wrote their biggest check to get into a different disease space and bought Cyderm and bought a phase 3 product that fell under my leadership and didn't exactly work to the degree that the company wanted it to work. Yeah. And so, that all kind of helps define you, right? It helps define you in terms of a leader, in terms of how you build up your own resilience, how you don't get down on things, and you just keep on, it builds your character.
We talked a little bit before we started recording here about failure in the biotech industry. Yeah. Is that just what you sign on for when you sign on to the biotech industry?
For me, when I made the decision to become the CEO of this company, I said, we will never lose hope. We will fail. We will fail a lot. And that's okay, because that's also part of learning. It's not okay, but it's also, but it's part of learning. I don't want to fail with other people's money. I get that. But what are we trying to do here? Right. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about what our mission statement was, what our core values are, all this stuff like companies do. But we live through that. We live through the tenacity. We live through the hope. Yeah. That's what it's all about. So 9 out of 10, whatever the numbers are, fail within biotech, but 1 out of 10 get there. And that 1 out of 10 helps a lot of people. Yeah. Right. And it's changed the lives of a lot of people. And it's fueled our industry, which needs more and more capital so that we can make that 9 out of 10 go down even further, right? And we see all the advances in technology and all that, but it's our job, and it's my job as a leader of this company to be able to continue to instill that hope and tenacity into not only myself, but my colleagues around me. That's what keeps me going.
Yeah, that's great. 2017, are you ready to leave Amicus? And how did you come about Entrada? Can you tell the story a little bit?
I don't know if I was ready to leave Amicus, but I was getting more attention from venture capitalists in Boston. I lived in New Jersey. I still live in New Jersey. Yeah. But there's so much work left to be done at Amicus. I wanted to be able to launch Galafold, to be part of the team that launched their first commercial drug. And we were making impact, and we were having fun doing it. It was a very close-knit group at the senior team. But there's always this itch. I'm like, all right, look, I've done sales, I've done consulting, I've been trying to piece this together so that I could run something one day.
Yeah.
What that meant, I don't know. Maybe it was just being the chief business officer at Amicus and running, different parts of the organization. Or should I take a shot at myself? So I literally sat there on a Friday, which I've been doing for a long, long time.
Magical time
for Dipal. And I said, but I said it in a different way to myself. I said, all right, my kids are getting older. What do I want to instill in them? Do I have the drive to build the next company? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And so I started casually kind of meeting people in Boston. I was spending more time up here as well, but never kind of detracting away from my core job. So it was more of just meeting people and learning about things. And then I started building a relationship with the fund in Boston called 5AM Ventures, and that funded a lot of rare disease companies, and led by two. They are now the managing partners right now, Kush Parmar and Andy Schwab, two just great guys who work really, really hard and build really interesting companies. Some work, some don't, right? And also talking to other folks in rare diseases and things like that. I knew that I wanted to work in rare. I had caught the bug, so to speak, right? And so over the course of a year, I just kept on talking to 5AM.
Yeah.
And, I'd meet them wherever, I'd be in Boston, they'd come down to New Jersey or whatever it is. We just have conversations, but not about nothing specific.
Yeah.
Right. And then one day they said, hey, we have this idea where we think that, what do you know about intracellular drug delivery? And I'm like, well, not much. Right?
Give me another Friday morning.
Right.
I'll
I
come
was
back
like,
to
I can give you back the 3 words and then tell you what that's about. But what I didn't understand, which was one of these aha moments, was that 75% of all disease targets are intracellular and we can't access them efficiently. And that was the aha moment for me. If someone could figure that out, this becomes, we were in the midst of gene therapies being the next thing, gene editing coming, and that's going to be the next thing. And what these guys explained to me, and then I met with, some of the researchers, was no one has done this efficiently or effectively. No one's proven this yet.
Yeah.
What we see is drugs on the outside of cells kind of get in, but you need these copious, volume of the drugs to be able to create some type of actionable event inside. But what if you bypass all that and you can have a delivery mechanism that can actually get into the cell, escape the early endosome, and get to the nucleus and do its thing? Well, that would be huge. We could go after a lot of different diseases. And it just got me thinking. And I remember,
so it's a platform.
It was a platform, but I'm like, oh my goodness, this could be huge. This is a big deal. Do I believe in the science? And that's when I met Natarajan Sethuraman, who's our president of R&D. And had a history at Merck and then went to Glycofy up in New Hampshire. What I didn't know was he came down to Princeton one day where I live, and we had lunch. What I didn't know about Natarajan was that he's also a Hindu priest.
Yeah.
And so we're having a lunch, and I'm having a chicken Caesar salad, and he's just staring at me, right? Which he's
he told me he told me that he couldn't eat much at that lunch.
No. No one told me this, right? So I 9 years later, I still apologize to him. And he and I talked, and I realized, and we spent 3 hours together at that lunch. I pretty soon figured out that I should probably push my food aside, and we had a couple iced teas. And I was like, wow, this is what a partnership could actually look like. Yeah. He is a brilliant scientist who has no ego. And I am a first-time CEO who has a fair amount of ego, but not obnoxious amount.
Yeah.
I can view the strategy side and work with him on the side. He can teach me, I can teach him. We can go about this together. We see the world in a similar way. We both have 2 kids. We're all the similarities were there to create a partnership. And I remember he was leaving to go to a Gates, he was on the advisory board of a Gates Foundation initiative, and he was going to go to London and then go to India to see his family. And I remember calling Kush Parmar and saying, we got to get this guy, ASAP. You get this guy, I'm all in, right? And that started our story together.
Yeah.
About how what cycloporters at the time, because that was the company's first name, which I didn't know at that time.
Which sounds like a bicycle courier service.
That or Cyclops disease, right? It's like things like that. So when that's what the company was incorporated at, that's fine. Yeah. We obviously changed it to Entrada. But oh my goodness, if we could put our minds together, we could put our passion together, we could put our experiences, our ability to embrace risk, our ability to live through failure.
Yeah.
That could be a big deal.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about capital raise. You did decide to go to public.
We did, yes.
During kind of COVID-ish, yes. Right? I'm sure you did a virtual roadshow or whatever it was. How did becoming public change your responsibilities? How did it change the long-term nature of what the mission of the company was to maybe something that's a bit more short-term oriented? I say that with a question mark. And how did you change how you spent your time?
Yeah, it was, we were one of the last biotech IPOs to go out, and, we raised a fair amount of capital with some great investors. Yeah, $200 million, did the whole NASDAQ, rang the bell type of thing. What I told myself and what our external counsel, a gentleman by the name of Kingsley Taft, who's at Goodwin Procter, what he told me is that try to minimize the changes. You will have a lot of compliance running at you now, right? Mm-hmm. Guidance, things like that. You don't want to restate guidance. So I had a little bit of, I knew a little bit about this just because, my short stint as a banker and then working for Catalent, and Catalent was part of Cardinal Health and it was taken public by Blackstone. So there was all these different mechanisms that I understood about how a public company kind of operates. But oh boy, it was different. It was different. I think the first thing is anything you say is pretty much public, right?
That's right.
You got to be careful with what you say. But the good thing is that, we kind of knew that. It's really hard to control the message.
Sure.
And we've had some setbacks along the way. One of our programs was put on clinical hold. We never disclosed why. And part of that was not being stubborn. It's that you'll never be able to get that full story out there.
Yeah.
Because people read headlines more than anything. So what do? You keep on moving. You keep on pushing forward. So I think those are some of the things that we learned. What we tried not to change based upon some of the advice that I got from folks who lived through this.
So I want to come back to that clinical hold, but before we do, I want to talk about the stock price.
Yeah.
Not wherever it is, because I don't exactly know, but some would argue the stock price is a barometer of your success, right? Whether you're on track, whether you've hit your clinical milestones, et cetera. Your stock at one point was $5.
Yeah.
So how do you communicate that
Sure.
to your team, and how do you continue to motivate them when
stock's $5? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't equate stock price as success. I think that's part of it. I think you can equate it in the short term if you're looking at this short term. I've told my entire company, I've told my board that this might be my last job, right? I'm not in it to, sell the company. I'm here to build the next Vertex, right? That's what I want to do. So the lens is a lot wider for me and it's a lot longer.
So let's go back to that clinical hold.
Yeah.
I know, understanding you can't say too much about it. How was that? How much of that was a setback for the organization, and what was the reaction to it, and then the response, reaction response?
It's a good question. I think there's different layers of that answer, right? So for me and my senior leadership team, it wasn't a setback. Partially because the division of FDA that we are operating with or working with has a history of being pretty conservative. And so all oligonucleotides, which is half the basis of our drugs here, have been put on clinical hold within these neuromuscular diseases. Part of that also is it's the same division that's approved all of Sarepta's drugs as well too, non-gene therapy. And so there's a little bit of, conservatism there. And so we knew there was a chance for us to be put on clinical hold. Mm-hmm. But taking that news and saying that that's a possibility, we also decided to go run the trial outside of the US as well, knowing that let's not put all of our eggs in a basket that's really risky, which is FDA. But let's look at, EMA and MHRA as well too from, Europe and then England. So we were put on hold. The rationale is kind of irrelevant now that FDA had, because any issue that they had has been overcome.
Right.
We just shared a bunch of data from our clinical trial in Europe, and it was more around a safety update, which is what FDA's key concern always is, right? It's their responsibilities to the citizens of America from a safety perspective, right? And so, and that's a great role to have and a huge responsibility. So we weren't too concerned about it because we were going to run it outside the U.S. as studies outside the U.S. We had a feeling this was going to happen, right? We also know that these holds are going to be temporary because we're running the studies outside the U.S. Mm-hmm. Now, the important thing that the company did also was the reasons why we were on hold in the U.S. We also shared that with the Europeans, so they knew. It was eyes wide open type of thing. They knew, and they allowed us to kind of continue to move forward because it's not a huge concern, right? But it really just comes down to testing your own culture, and I think for us, knowing that the long-term view would be okay, I think we were okay.
I wanted to talk about culture because you did bring it up. Everyone talks about culture a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So how do you live it at Entrada? As you said, you ask people, why did you come? Right. So how are people reminded, on a frequent basis, why they came to the company?
It's a great question. I think it's through the formation of a lot of employee-led groups, I think is one way, right? I don't think leadership should ever be top down. I think that's a mistake. I think embedded values, period, should be set, and strategic direction should be set from the top, and then it gets embedded. Mm-hmm. And I don't like doing this type of thing, but if the rest of the organization believes in it, but you ask for that feedback, right? What we do feedback surveys every quarter, might be every half a year. And we take that extremely seriously.
Yeah.
What are we doing well? What are we not doing well?
Yeah.
Some things you can control, some things you can't control. Some things come back to being a public company. I wish I knew this. Well, I wish I knew that too.
Right.
Type of thing. So but there are certain things. But then also we have these committees. We have an EPIC committee. It's more around company celebrations, and it's people apply for it, right? And they show that happiness. You share, we share whether it was Chinese New Year or Diwali or on MLK Day, I send out an email every MLK Day about letters from Birmingham jail, and how I read that every single MLK day, because it reminds me of how far we've gone, but how much further we still have to go, based upon a leader who wrote that letter on pieces of paper and somehow smuggled it out of a jail, and it became one of the greatest readings that I think I've ever read. But sharing that with the company, showing up, right? I don't need to be there every single day, but I need to show up. You show up in different ways.
Yeah.
Taking that pride with folks, having, there's only so much swag you can give out, right?
Right.
There's only so many parties you can have, right? But being vulnerable, being transparent. Our turnover in Boston, even as a public company, is still under 8%. I think oftentimes companies say culture, but people can read through. We have smart people. They can read through lip service.
Yeah. They
can call me out if I provide lip service. I also respond to every email I get.
That's great.
Right? And I leave every we call them all hands, but I leave every all hands meeting with the message that this is your company. Everyone is a shareholder in the company, which means I'm responsible to every single person in the room, outside the room, on the Zoom. So if you have a question, ask your question.
Yeah.
It's my job to answer your questions. It's my team's job to answer your questions.
Yeah.
And we take that really seriously, because whether you own 1 share or 1 million shares, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You are part of this journey with us. And so we will treat you as if you are part of the team and part of the family.
I love that. I was also told that 80% of your workers, or at one point, were in the lab.
Yeah.
And you had pictures of Duchenne muscular dystrophy boys put up all around
all over the
labs.
place. The couple things that we did with this lab space in Boston was, it's in the Seaport area in Boston. It was a really old building. We're on the 5th and 6th floors. When we chose to put the company in Boston, this is not to take any shots at my friends in Cambridge. We gave the best views to those in the labs, the views of the water, things like that, instead of kind of like you're in this like, dark lab.
Yeah, windowless lab.
Windowless, like ventless lab, it felt like. We spent a lot of money on that space because that defined who we are and how we view employees. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful space. We are a research-driven company. 75% of the people are in the lab. Mm-hmm. But everyone needs reminders. And one of the things that I did take away from Amicus, one of the many things I took away was their hyper-focus on patients. And I think we all say this, but if you go into our offices, you'll see offices and labs, you'll see the pictures of these young boys, and then you have a little QR code. And so you scan the QR code, it goes to our website, you can read about their histories. Each of those kids have been in our office to share their journey, their path.
I love that. I'm going to talk about noise one more time.
Sure.
The competitive landscape.
Yep.
So DMD, again, Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, is a competitive environment. I don't know if you think of it as competition or if you think of it as, a lot of other people, trying to go after the same thing. But the waters have been muddied.
Yeah.
Just the history of the space. So how do you think about those muddied waters when you're developing your own program, when you're, again, communicating with employees, trying to differentiate yourself in general? How much of that muddied water competitive landscape is just an overhang on you all the time?
It's a very real thing. What I started saying in 2024, I think to our board, 2023, 2024, was that we're going to see a clearinghouse in DMD right about now, right? And so it was between 25 and 27. Mm-hmm. And what have we seen? We've seen competitors leave DMD. I've never been, unfortunately, I've always hoped, right? Because I love it's not competition. It's technically competition, but we should all be rooting for each other as members of, mankind, humankind, whatever you want to call it, to be able to get a drug to these patients.
Yeah.
And it should make us better. It should make us work harder. It should make us look at differentiation differently. It should make us do that one extra experiment, things like that, right? Mm-hmm. We should force each other to rise up, type of thing. DMD, unfortunately, hasn't been all of that. There's been a lot of marketing around DMD, which has not come to fruition. And I have very, very strong feelings about this because we're living this, right? Gene therapy is not the answer right now.
Right.
But if you're a mom or a dad and you have a kid, what options do you have right now?
Yeah.
Right? We all look at this. We all look at time in different ways. What you need in DMD is a flexible approach, one that you can customize to a patient. So what we need right now, and we all have I say this to our company, we have a obligation to obsolete our own technology. Now, whether that's through us, mm-hmm. developing more and more, or someone else, that's fine. Because what's the key success criteria at the end of the day is hopefully a functional cure, right? So what we're seeing is a clearinghouse a little bit right now. So you have the Entradas of the world. You have different approaches which are using antibodies. Then you have gene therapy. Gene editing is kind of taking a bit of a step back. What we see from that noise perspective is opportunity, right? Now, does that bring us down at times? Of course it does. Mm-hmm. Is it harmful? Sure. Do I look at investors and they're like, well, we've heard this story before? Sure. That's okay. But that's why it's free will, right? Like we're not changing. We're not going to change. We're going to continue to press forward on behalf of the patients. We're going to continue to do that extra experiment. We're going to continue to try to look at all the issues that DMD has faced and challenge them head on. Because that's what we should all be striving for. And if Company X does it better than us, then good for Company X.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe we can learn from that. I just think I wouldn't bet against Entrada, right? Because we're going that extra way. We're going that extra mile, so to speak. So that's how we kind of diminish the noise, right? Focus on what we are setting forth. Leave that alone. You can't control that.
How do you spend your time when you're not working? What would your family say?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's a good question. I try to stay present with them. It's a struggle.
Sure.
I think with the amount of pressure that's building because of the focus around Entrada, it gets harder. It ebbs and flows. But I will say, over the winter holidays, we went to Egypt for 2 weeks,
Amazing.
right? And I shut down. Like, I closed it down for a while. A CEO's job is never about shutting off your phone. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It's about finding those pockets of time to be present. I went on, a college revisit this past weekend with my son, right? And the family went. It's picking your points in time, sitting down watching TV with the kids, like visiting them, helping them, going for a walk with Sejal, with my wife, like things like that. Going out to dinner, like that's it. I'm not the guy that's getting up at 4:00 in the morning and going to CrossFit. Like that's just never been me, right? And that's okay, but I teach their own.
Yeah.
But I try to be present in different ways, and I think I just try to show up.
They say being a CEO is the loneliest job. Do you have a group of people that you lean on? Do you have mentors?
I have a group of people I lean on. I do lean on my family a lot. And I lean on what I find to be my oldest friends, because they know you from when you were someone else.
That's right.
And they will never let you live that down.
Yeah.
Right?
They'll be honest
and they
with
will
you.
keep you honest. Yes. Yeah. And that keeps me honest. That keeps me kind of spry. And it keeps the kid in you some regards, right? Because the amount of pressure from being a public company CEO, and remember, I've been a CEO now. It's 9 years. It's a long time. Public for 5 almost now, 4.5, 5. Like it's, there's a shelf life here too, right?
Yeah.
It takes a toll on you. So being around people that are going to keep you real and keep you honest and be like, hey man, you gained a couple pounds. Maybe you should get into the gym. But who care?
Right.
They're not there for cosmetic purposes. They care about you. Or you look tired, or, you're kind of being a jerk these days, or you're not listening to me, or I need you to shut up so I can speak, right? That's really important. That's really, really important. It makes the job lonelier. I don't like talking about my job outside of my job, because there's another life to me. And more importantly, the people I'm interacting with have a different life that's not mine.
Yeah.
So I like learning what's going on with my kids, with family. Like my mom's in India. Like I like talking to her about whatever she wants to talk about, things like that, right? It's being present and showing up. But it's certainly a lonely job. In terms of mentorship, I don't have a specific mentor. I take from the past. I take bits and pieces from each individual person. But I'm also not shy around asking people for guidance. I just have to be careful with what I'm asking them about. Because there's many people, I view this as kind of like a windy road, right? And so I look for people that can help me understand what the next curve in the road is before I get to that curve. But there are many people in the past that have kind of put me into this position that I'm in today by challenging me, by telling me I'm either missing the point or dive a little bit deeper or be a little bit more honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Like you build from that.
You recently lost your father.
Yeah. He's one. Yeah, he's one of them. And I was at the World Conference in Prague, and we knew my dad had a neurodegenerative disease. And, we haven't known my dad. We didn't know my dad for a few years because we remembered him as this vibrant Indian uncle who, always knew everyone's name and would want to have a beer with everybody, right?
Yeah.
And, and make fun of his kids. And we hadn't seen that in a long time because of this disease that kind of took over. I'll tell you the biggest thing that I saw out of my dad leaving us is the strength of my mom. That was the biggest thing. That's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah.
People say that, my mom's going to turn 80 in October. Strength comes from different places, and her ability to take care of my dad, and she wasn't perfect. No one is.
Yeah.
and his reliance upon her later in life, and the love that you could see through the yelling, I'm sure, right. Was remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I will forever try. My kids have 3 out of their 4 grandparents alive, and I will forever treasure the fact that my dad was the first to go, but they will know their grandparents, starting with my dad, and then the other 3, and they will take from them who their mom and dad took from. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Dipal, thank you so much for coming. You're a wealth of wisdom. You've been through a lot.
Yeah.
And what I love is that with all the setbacks, you are smiling, you're moving forward. You only look back to learn so that you can apply it to the future.
Yeah, and that's the point. That's the key takeaway, right? The key takeaway is that life is not supposed to be easy. It's not. It's supposed to challenge you. It's supposed to throw curveballs at you. It's all about building up resilience and keeping your North Star and just not giving up. Don't give up. Because we're going to it's easy to celebrate all the great stuff, but you can learn. Just keep on learning.
I couldn't have said it better.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheetal.